On YouTube. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good night, and welcome to Mindful Live. Mindful Live, what are we on now? 5:20. I am Nathan Springer. Thank you for joining me. Welcome. Once you're on the inside, make sure you hit that like button. 2 taps of the screen, 2 quick taps of the screen over there on TikTok. That's how you hit the like button out there. And you can do it over and over and over and over and over again. Really like those likes to build. On YouTube, make sure you're hitting that like button also. Make sure you're hitting that like button also. Make sure you subscribe. Drop a comment if you have something to say. Tell me what you think. I do read all of those YouTube comments, so hit me up. Mr. Militant says it's time enough we get away from US control. If only it were that easy. It's like if you're seated in Trinidad and saying it's time enough we get away from UNC control. I mean, yes, you may not like the UNC controlling you if you don't like the UNC controlling you, but what you gonna do about it? Are you going to pull out Abu Bakr? Do you have that kind of level of militancy, Mr. Militant? $3,000 for a US visa. Like, no, I think nobody who is anti-America, Darius, I think nobody who is anti-America should have any complaints about the US not wanting people in their country. Ariev the God says, I do understand why Kamala has taken her stance even if I don't agree. I fully understand also. And I don't think I agree, but I think I know what she's playing for. And I don't think she is crazy. Abdul is correct. I think Cam's done put all the eggs in the US basket. I think that is correct. And she's betting all in on that horse. And the thing is, using current situation and historical precedents, it's not a bad bet to bet on the US coming out economically on top. Richardo says a dead horse. A dead horse by whose merit? Which horse in the world would you bet on against the United States? And which bet has ever won in that case? Like, even the places where the US has lost in the long run, the people who were attempting to beat them already lost too. Come now, Richardo, come now, man. I'll behave all yourself now. Stop it. There are no lines to enter China. Relax on yourself now. Oh gosh. Like, I mean, I understand if you don't like the US. I understand that totally. That makes good sense. But let's not become illogical at the same time. And if she gets it right, you all would have to say thanks, even though you all won't. Ariev the God says. Not necessarily. You see, even if she gets it right, that doesn't mean I would like the outcome. If she gets it right, that means we place ourselves squarely as a subservient role to the United States. And I would have preferred a much more independent role on the global stage. And there are many countries who have done that. The Russia got hit with how many sanctions and yet their economy didn't crash? Why is that? Because Russia has actual resources, obviously. Because they have actual resources. That's clear to see. But I can bet you if the United States wanted to take over Ukraine, they would have done it in a weekend. And truth teller, it's not about being pro-American. It's about being realistic. But it makes sense. Because many of the people who are the strongest anti-American are most often tainted with the left-wing view of politics. And socialism and communism is the political version of a flat earther. It's like arguing with somebody who believes the earth is flat, arguing with a socialist. They don't understand the proper logic of the thing they're speaking about. So I could understand why someone who is generally socialist would have thwarted views of all things political. Do you think that the white powder is more of a threat to the US than Fent? No, I think fentanyl is more of a threat to the US. And I believe China is doing it on purpose. And I think China has good reason to do it on purpose. I think China has good reason to do it on purpose. Anyone knows about the opium wars? Where the US, as the hegemony back then, basically used drugs to weaken China, devastated China. China is still, as it were, recovering from some of that. So then why don't they park the ships off China? Because people would lose a lot of money with that. People would lose a lot of money with that. And China is not Venezuela. China can do something about your ships off of their coast. So would you be willing to throw the world into a global war to stop that fentanyl that you think is coming there? I don't think so. The reality, if Trump comes out on top having favorable terms with them, good is good for TNT economy. Good is good for TNT economy isn't good is good for everyone. Like, if Hitler won World War II, Italy would have made a beautiful choice. So if Hitler did win World War II, would you have told the Italian fascists that they made the right choice because they rose in economic status? Would that have been the right choice? Like, I don't think that's just the way how things go. I don't think more money automatically equals the right choice. Double standard, though, of course it's a double standard. I mean, if there aren't double standards, there would be no standards, Fitzpat. Whoever thought that all the standards are the same? That's a lie that has, if ever a lie has been told. I believe it's an attempt to stamp hegemony in the West. I agree. This is what I said. I don't think it's about the oil in Venezuela per se. I don't think it's about the oil in Venezuela per se. I think it's more about control. It's that they don't want it to be that their sphere of control in the West is compromised. Now, I also find it very interesting the fact that they started this move right after Trump's talk with Russia, and there is some conversation out there that Russia and Venezuela aren't actually on as good terms as they may have once been, because Venezuelan oil is pumping heavily into India. Venezuelan oil is pumping heavily into India, offsetting some of the Russian market that they need also. So who knows? Maybe Trump scratches Vlad's back by inhibiting some oil flowing into India and China, and then the Russians can sell more to India and China, and they're happy there. We don't know how all of these things go. Some guy just compared Kamala to Hitler. Like, Ariev, I think this isn't the chat for you, buddy. If you can't understand what a comparison means, I wasn't saying Kamala is Hitler. I was making a comparison based on your views of things. The Italian PM spoke something sensible for a fascist recently. Her position on Africa is fact. China is stamping hegemony in the East. And what would it cost us if they are going to use our land as a springboard? What I've read that oil, what Venezuela has, it's low grade. Yes, it is, but that doesn't change the fact that it is oil. A man says Kamala has no choice. I disagree. She has many choices. Choices to stay much more neutral than she is. She is choosing to dive into the fray and make out clearly that she has chosen a side. Let's see if we could dive into some of the news actually. Trump, US carried out strike against drug carrying vessel that left Venezuela. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that the U.S. has carried out a strike in the southern Caribbean against a drug-carrying vessel that departed from Venezuela. The president offered scant details on the operation. When you leave the room, you will see that we just over the last few minutes literally shot a boat, a drug-carrying boat, Trump told reporters during an unrelated Oval Office event. He added there were a lot of drugs on the vessel. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on X that the vessel was being operated by a designated narco-terrorist organization. He described the operation as a lethal strike. The U.S. has recently announced plans to boost its maritime force in the waters of Venezuela to combat threats from Latin American drug cartels. Rubio, drugs were probably heading to Trinidad. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has told reporters that the drugs on a Venezuelan vessel that was destroyed by the U.S. military on Tuesday was probably heading to Trinidad or another Caribbean country. And our Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Trinidad, U.S. military should kill them all violently. Rawson Warren says Russia cannot help anyone, they have their own. Exactly. I agree, Russia can't really help much. I think lots of these, like, here's the thing. I don't think any country really has the military power to do the kind of thing that the US wanted to do in Iraq and Afghanistan, because those things aren't done with the military power. It's just not how those things go. But as far as military power goes, I don't know, like every week some anti-US folks in the chat regularly argue this, but they never provide me with any kind of evidence. What gives you the feeling that some one of these other countries are so much more militarily superior? Like, what gives you that impression? I have seen nothing to give me that impression. Let's say Trump calls off the operation and leaves. What's going to happen to us in Trinidad? Nothing. Well, she did ask for sanction on Trinidad. Should Russia have done an operation shock and awe like US did? And a half-empty pirogue with children on board. What? How do you know that, DJ? This woman does piss me off so much. She hoping the US kills Maduro. I think so. Please go Separia first, Venezuela. I feel the US and Trinidad have a meeting. That's why Kamala moving so. Yeah, I don't know how you know what's on board the boat. Like I said, I tend to believe that it's actually that there are actually drugs coming out of South America. Like, there's no reason to doubt that. Like, why? Yes, I know that the CIA regularly funds drugs, and I know that the US is often on both sides of a war on drugs. The Taliban, right before the US invaded Afghanistan, the Taliban dropped their share of the global opium trade to 0%. The US invades Afghanistan to take care of Osama bin Laden and the Taliban, those wicked, evil people. And shocking, what would you know? Their percentage stake of the opium trade skyrockets back to 50% or something like that. Yes, I know they do those things. But if they do those things, don't you think that, yeah, they would know where the drugs are coming from? I don't doubt that they really are drugs. I also saw that talk online about children who on board didn't know how true. The US up and leave, nothing happens, everything here stays the same. That has been happening for years. I don't know why Trini's acting surprised. Yes, Colombia. Yeah, like, I don't doubt that illicit stuff is coming out of the mainland. I also don't doubt that Maduro and his government may have a part to play in it, and it's understandable why. If you are locked out of global legal trade, then wouldn't you pretty much obviously attempt to become the best at the global illegal trades? That makes sense. Fitzpatrick says drugs that we are focusing on are becoming outdated. Designer drugs are now taking over. That might be in some places in the United States, but in Trinidad and Tobago, by and large, it's still the good old that runs the streets. It's not only drugs that come to TNT, correct. Money had to make some house in it, and why they don't pursue and arrest. Pursue and arrest whom? pursue and arrest who? Pursue and arrest the pirogue full of drug traffickers? Because they don't want to. Because they don't want to be responsible for having to imprison all of these men. What are they going to do with Venezuelans that are breaking laws that the US says they're breaking? What are you going to do with them? Take them to American prisons? And after they finish serve their time in American prisons, then what? Like, come on. Do you really expect that? That's why they call it a war on terrorists, so they are able to do these kinds of things. 90% of the white stuff goes up the West Coast. Okay. Surprised? No, I'm not, but our PM really thumping her chest. Yes, she is. Good night, Otis. Oh, you didn't see the video. What video is that? But I only hearing news that Maduro only trying to flee Venezuela. Yes, I wouldn't doubt that he might be trying to flee. I wouldn't doubt that he might be trying to flee, because the way many of those things go is if regime change happens, the US doesn't necessarily need to end him. Many of the times, like Gaddafi, it wasn't personally some CIA operatives who did him in. You would have enemies within your own country that if they facilitate enough chaos, your enemies would get to you. So I'm not surprised if he's trying to run. But Nathan, even if the move Maduro, the drugs still won't slow down. And that's why I said I don't think it's about the morality of the drugs. I do not believe that. Because if they do move him, put another person in, someone else will take over the network, and it very likely would continue. Maybe it might decrease for a little while. You mightn't get as much fent coming in, but it will go on. So you saying that little boat was heading to America? I guess you just joined me, because I just read where Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, the US Secretary of State, said that most likely the boat was headed to Trinidad. Do you think it's easier to target the source in Colombia? The source isn't only in Colombia, Fitzbert. There are many sources. They can grow it in Venezuela too. Venezuela has a lot of very, very lush rainforests that they can grow their things there too. It's not just Colombia grows. Mexico grows their own stuff too. Many places grow their own stuff. The only in Colombia thing is not necessarily correct. Tanticam said, I, along with most of the country, am happy that the U.S. naval deployment is having success in their mission. The Prime Minister said in a WhatsApp message, illegally trafficked drugs and arms have caused death and destruction in our society over the last 25 years. Our country has been ravaged by bloody violence and addiction because of the greed of the cartels. The slaughter of our people is fueled by evil cartel traffickers. The pain and suffering the cartels have inflicted in our nation is immense. Them small boats been coming here. Why we acting surprised? Correct, truth teller, they've been coming. They have been coming. And what's going to happen if the US starts bombing them? As I was saying before we jumped in on YouTube, that's going to have an impact on our local economy, on the dark side of our local economy. Herbs and powder may be going up in price. If it goes up in price, would that cause more or less violence in the Trinidad drug economy? Does that stand to increase or decrease the violence within our drug networks in Trinidad? If a squeeze comes onto the supply end. What happens if more friction happens in Venezuela and refugees start bailing off of the mainland at 10 times the pace they were before? So what happens if our drug network becomes chaotic on the island, and then we have a mass influx of even more migrants. What's that going to do to the Trinidad and Tobago landscape? What's going to happen? And Maduro defiant as US sends more warships. Both sides don't seem like they have any intention to back down. So where does it end? If indeed Maduro is making his money through these shipments, Truth Teller says, wait till US find out we have our hand in the black market too. Do you think the US doesn't know that, Truth Teller? Wait till US, you think they don't know that? Colombia, the top producing drug country in South America, have 3 US bases. You actually believe this BS? Believe what BS? What's the BS to believe? That the US is well capable of being allies to drug dealers and enemies to drug dealers at the same time? Yes, I do believe that. The US speaks about dictators as being horrible people, but the US, part of the US closest relationship is with a running family of dictators out of Saudi Arabia for decades. So, wow. Oh, hypocrisy in politics. Shocker. Is that shocking to you? A man says there's a reason why they would say the boat was heading Trinidad. Well, our name would be regularly on the Americans' lips, and it seems so. If Maduro decides to go to the guerrilla war path, 20 years of war Trinidad will have to deal with. Correct, Abdul? Correct. Now the question here, and this may be part of what they're trying to evaluate. Is there enough of an ideological or cultural force that will encourage people into guerrilla warfare and grinding away for the next 30 years? Or is it so much of a likely held power structure that if you were to topple Maduro, you just topple and another person takes his place and go on? Which is it? I don't know. US is the biggest dictator? I don't think so. Dictator has a meaning. We are the main transshipment point between South and North America, so they know without drugs monies, the economy will take a huge hit. That's the next side. So other than the possible violence inside the dark economy in our country, other than the increased Venezuelan migrants that can come flooding across, we also know that there's serious link between the black market and the regular market in Trinidad and Tobago. There was an article about this recently. There's a heavy black market supply on Forex in Trinidad and Tobago. And the truth is, lots of those illegal pharmaceutical dealers, they deal in US dollars too, because they have to go across borders. They have to go across borders, so they have to deal in international currencies. And then they also use that international currency in our local market. So our local market depends on some of the black market also. That's not a non-impact. It would have an all-round impact. And the point I'm making on this is that this kind of super anti-US idea you have, where you feel like nothing they say could even have a speck of truth. So it don't even have any drugs that it could I do not doubt that there is that indeed they would be inhibiting a drug market. It's all a distraction, folks. If you know I'm beginning to hate that word, if you know how I'm beginning to hate that, it's all a distraction. the conspiracy-minded person, and I could be a bit conspiratorial too, but the over-conspiracy-minded person says everything is a distraction. And each person that says it's a distraction says it's a distraction from a different thing. If they are in on the belief of the Gaza-Israel thing, it's a distraction from Israel. If they are in on the Epstein side, it's a distraction from Epstein. It's a distraction from this. It's a distraction from the World Economic Forum. It's a distraction. It's a distraction from what? Crime is at the moment a necessary part of the economy, as unfortunate as that is. Abdul says that's the perception of the US. They created that mistrust, and the world says correct, they did. Team USA in this instance, Tian Graham says. International summit minus the US, Z says. Oh, so that's what it's a distraction from? Bishop Andrew says, has the US Congress been emasculated by POTUS? I mean, that has always been how the US Congress has functioned. They like the emasculation in the US Congress. They prefer that the president makes those decisions, not them. They don't have a foot to stand on because believe they're not friendly with their other neighbors either. I believe that. Team My Survival, Abdul says, I on your team there, Abdul. Otis says, what's the moral of the story of the little boy who cried wolf? Yeah. Now, I have no pity for the position that the US has found themselves in, but it's understandable. You look at history, and that's just the nature of it. The strong guy in a region gets the bad name, because if you are the big guy in a region, it's inevitable that you would mash quite a few people's corn. That's how you get to be the big guy in a region. Now, does it make sense to befriend that big guy in a region? Does it make sense to be more on that guy's side? On that guy's side, there was a quote. What's the guy's name? What's that guy's name again? Oh gosh. He has been around US geopolitics forever. He died last year, I think, or earlier this year. Very famous. He was once a Secretary of State and very famous inside of US geopolitics as a mover and shaker. I forgot his name. And he has a quote saying that being a US enemy is a dangerous position. Kissinger, correct. You knew who I was talking about, man. Kissinger. Being a US ally, enemy is dangerous, but being a US ally is even worse. It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal. I think Tantikams should probably get that quote printed out and placed in her office. It may be dangerous to be America's enemy, but to be America's friend is fatal. So, I think Cam should contemplate on that a bit. Venezuela Defense Minister slams TNT over US comments. You see that kind of thing? Venezuelan Defense Minister slams TNT. It's Tantikams made the statement, but it's TNT getting slammed. Bishop Andre says, is China the sleeping elephant in the room? I don't think China is sleeping at all. I don't think anybody mistakes China for sleeping. Oh, Aretha, what's going on? In Trinity terms, you have to know who behind to kiss. Venezuela's Defense Minister, General Vladimir Padrino Lopez, has strongly condemned the government of Trinidad and Tobago over recent statements by our Prime Minister, who said her administration would allow the US to use TNT as a base if Venezuela attacked Guyana. The TNT government has said it would lend its territory to the US empire to attack what they call the Cartel of the Suns, Padrino Lopez said. He went on to reference colonial history, citing British and Napoleonic era views of TNT as a strategic military outpost against Venezuela. The minister further accused Port of Spain of being subservient to Washington. And you see, therein is a problem. That's why I said when someone earlier on in the live said she didn't have a choice. I disagree. I do not think we need to be in the position of being a clear military outpost. I don't think that's necessary. Because if we are seen as a clear military outpost, then we are a military target. If we are a military outpost, we are a military target. High treasure. And if what the US is alleging, if what Tanti Kams is alleging is that the Venezuelan government is working alongside cartels, can't we be the target of not obvious and overt military action? So it's not like what we're worried about is a Venezuelan destroyer coming across. No. But if you're saying that the Venezuelan government is running the cartel of the suns, who is to say that this cartel can turn up the heat in Trinidad and Tobago and really put us in a state of emergency? Not this jokey thing where people talking about they're afraid for their life and they began bowling cricket and all this kind of nonsense. No. Let me see if I could pull up this figure. How many politicians were murdered in the last Mexican elections? Once we back up PM, we agreed to be targets. According to multiple reports on the 2024 Mexican elections, at least 37 candidates were murdered during the campaign. "37 murdered during the campaign." So, if a cartel wants to turn up the heat in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't necessarily have to look out for Venezuelan destroyers and Venezuelan Guardia Nacional coming across on a boat into Trinidad, or a drone coming to bomb the Twin Towers or anything like that. No, that's not necessarily how a cartel would function. If Tanti Kams and the US believes what they're accusing Venezuela of, us putting ourselves in the crosshairs is just a bad idea. It's just a really bad idea. Trinicum says they are here already. Yes, that's not the point I'm making, is not that they would come across, but if you become a military target, then what's our portion? What would happen if all of those people who are here already start to be activated on the purpose of causing chaos in Trinidad and Tobago? How should TNT navigate to secure future oil deals? Who do we align with, US, Guyana, or Venezuela? I say we align with Trinidad and Tobago. And Nathan, Trinidadians thought people coming back from Syria. Some Syria was the problem. We too small to be a target of anything. Nathan, what's happening? Do you support our Prime Minister? Yes, in a sense I support her, but no, in a sense I don't. And I think, as I've kept saying, I think the better sensible road to be on is speak neutrally. And yes, I know the SOFA agreement is already there. Yes, I know that if push comes to shove, Trinidad is a military outpost of the United States. I know that. But you don't have to speak like that. Like, that's what being able to speak on our global stage demands. Like, you're supposed to be able to go and speak to the Barbadian leader while knowing that you want some more flying fish that the Barbadian fishermen are stealing, but you could still have a discussion with the Barbadian leader to get into that. Abdul says, listen, if I was Maduro, I fly 4 jets over Port of Spain just to send a message. Just fly over, shake it. Nah, I don't think he'd do that. That's why I don't think that Busa's agreements can be broken. Not those agreements. I don't think that Venezuela would want to do an overt action against Trinidad. And I believe that's what Tanticams is depending on. If, what you mean they never sign up for that? The leader of Tobago is an ally of our Prime Minister here in Trinidad, who is the Prime Minister of both of the countries, just so you know. Tobago is also under her Prime Ministership. But your substantive leader is a close ally of hers, so I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Theon Graham out there in Tobago. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I think what Tance is depending on is being the little brother of the United States. No one is going to do an overt action against you. If Maduro fly over 4 heavy jets over Port of Spain and shake Port of Spain, that will make Trump and those guys happy like pappy, because that will be cause for them to actually get boots on the ground in Venezuela. He doesn't want to do anything that seems like an offensive action against the US or their allies. And we are positioning ourselves as US ally numero uno in the Caribbean basin. So obviously they wouldn't do anything overt. But that's exactly the point I'm making. They don't need to do anything overt if what you're accusing them of is running cartels. Cartels don't do their things overtly. It will also be unwise of Venezuela to pick a fight with any CARICOM nation. Yeah. Venezuela can't pick a fight with anyone because the US is waiting on a reason. They're waiting on a reason, so I don't think they would do anything overtly. But as I said, if you're saying they're running cartels, they're running cartels. 37 people were murdered. Mexico is the neighbor to the United States. The United States has declared the Mexican cartels to be terrorist organizations too. Yet still those Mexican cartels are having influence because they don't strap on a uniform and say we are a military going to do something. Maduro didn't come across as if he wants. Of course he doesn't want. Why would Maduro want war? No one wants war with the United States unless they are ideologically bent on ending their lives. No one wants that war. They really don't. Now, but Venezuela been flooding all the islands with narcotics for years. And that's why what I said that at the beginning as one of the changes that may happen if indeed what the US says is happening. And I don't doubt it. If you have a platoon of US Marines and the Navy out there in the Caribbean Sea and they already shut down one vessel, like someone said they don't believe it's a drug vessel because who was going to actually do that? Many people would. Like, don't you know drug traffickers? Drug traffickers swallow a pellet this big of drugs into their body and try to go through an airport with it, knowing if they're caught they face life in prison, and if it ruptures in them they die. So I mean, traffickers about the risk it life. Let's not mama guy ourselves. Traffickers will risk it. That's how drugs reach where they reach. But if the US shut down one vessel, I think the number of traffickers who will risk it in that way has significantly decreased. So, not much vessels are going to be coming out. Who knows? We may see some of those Caribbean planting hubs like where was St. Vincent? Vincent was a herbal planting hub. Maybe they might have a chance to regain their position in herbal exports through the Caribbean. And gun runners send it through your legal port. Yes, they do. Yes, the gun runners do send it through our legal ports. I am aware. U.S. praises Trinidad and Tobago partnership in independence message. I tell you all, we are on the lips of the Americans. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio extended a message of congratulations to Trinidad and Tobago on its 63rd independence, which the country celebrated on August 31st. The commendation was posted on the U.S. Department of State's official website, and it emphasized the strong partnership between both countries. Rubio highlighted what he called deep ties and shared goals between the U.S. and TT. On behalf of the U.S., congratulations to the people of TT as you celebrate 63 years of independence, he wrote. His message also discussed what he says is the country's collaboration in promoting regional stability and prosperity, specifically mentioning joint efforts to combat transnational criminal organizations and narco trafficking. These efforts, he said, underscore the value of both countries' partnership and its impact throughout the region. He concluded by expressing the U.S.'s commitment to continued collaboration under the leadership of Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar, focusing on regional security, economic growth, and lasting stability. Yeah, but Nathan, they said they were unsure if it was a drug vessel. I don't know, but I don't doubt that it was a drugs vessel. I'll put it that way. I don't doubt that it was a drug vessel. And Trex, I don't doubt that there may be less drugs in the country soon. Remember how they got Escobar by partnership with rival cartels? Up until Obama, they were doing it. If you're interested, go crawl down the Fast and Furious. Go crawl down the Fast and Furious rabbit hole and see what that was all about. The US picked a side in a drug war. Sasha Orb says, no, you will see more drugs and weapons. I disagree. Like, why do you say that, Sasha Orb? What makes you get that belief? What makes you think you'd see more? Yes, that's where the Fast and Furious scandal came about. Obama trafficked guns to the cartels to fight against another cartel. Yes, they do that. I'm not surprised. But we are close allies of the US. We will have poorer fishermen now, Otis says. Funny. We are now premier allies of the US. What a position to be in, huh? And should it all work out, aren't we going to have preferable positioning in the Caribbean? Munilal eyes energy collaboration after Guyana election. Energy and Energy Industries Minister Rudal Munilal closely followed yesterday's general election in Guyana, particularly in relation to reigniting energy collaboration between the two countries. The election, which determined a president and 65 seats in parliament, featured 6 parties, with the contest largely focused on a three-way race between incumbent President Irfan Ali's People's Progressive Party, opposition leader Aubrey Norton's People's National Congress Reform (PNCR), and billionaire Azruddin Mohammed's We Invest in Nationhood party. Over 750,000 voters were registered at more than 2,800 polling stations, with the PPP widely tipped to retain power. Munilal, fresh from successful negotiations with Grenada on joint energy projects and following last Friday's meeting between Grenadian Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell and the Trinidad and Tobago government, said, we're keeping an eye on developments in Guyana as they relate to reigniting energy collaborations that have been lukewarm over the past years. Which country would say Maduro wants to attack if he does? I don't think Maduro wants to attack any country. Not at all. Allies usually include bilateral relations. Seems unilateral a bit. Well, we are the junior ally. Let's put it that way. And this could be part of the plan. If you have American backing with Guyanese oil, American companies getting access to the largest known reserves of oil in Venezuela, and then Trinidad's oil expertise, transshipment point, and who knows, maybe refinery. Wouldn't that be a partnership to be enviable of? Aretha Miriam says Ghana doing so well but still paying 200 TT for a tank of gas. It takes a while, Aretha, it takes a while. But Venezuela and Ghana have some tension. Yes, they do. And that's where the US comes in. If the US, in the ideal situation for all of them, the whole world going and condemn us, no, that's not true. The whole world is not going to condemn us. The whole world isn't BRICS. The BRICS would, not the whole world. Many of the world would join us if it succeeds. If the US succeeds in toppling Maduro, gets a US friendly leader, US companies come pouring back in, and we have that block of Venezuela, Guyana, Trinidad under US patronage, functioning as an oil hub in the Southern Caribbean. Abdul says social banking and Trump never leaving office, basically, or the ideas of Trump carrying on longer, because there does seem to be a setup right now in the United States where, should there be another leader in Trump's ilk, that it seems like the Republicans could be set for maybe three wins in a row, because the Democrats seem to be floundering very badly. That could be her intention, who knows? But that's a wishful thing, you don't know. Now you're talking theory, nobody not joining none. Well, that's not so, because there already is a joint venture with Trinidad, where Trinidad has joined in with the US and these other countries. There is a joint venture, so it's just about strengthening them. Don't think Modi would be pleased about this. And what's Modi going to do, really and truly? What is Modi going to do? That's the benefit of the US allyship. If the US is backing what you're doing, you have their power standing behind you. The problem is, if they no longer back what you're doing, as in the US has elections. And if those elections don't go to the Republican side, or they go to a Republican that is not into Trump's view of things, what then? Fitzpot says, I think the focus on oil distracts the movement of technology in other countries with renewable energy. I don't think so. I think if renewable energy was as profitable as some people think it is, it would have pretty much been where it should be. I think the profitability needs to increase, and then it would increase. I think that really and truly. If the US control this energy block in the West, they won't ever let go. I hope people know this. Of course they won't. Of course they won't. But there are many people in Trinidad and Tobago who would be very okay with Trinidad and Tobago basically having puppet rule, but being a very wealthy outpost of the United States. There's a large section of Trinidad, if given the choice, of Trinidad runs its independent course and we make our fate as we find it, or we become a US puppet state and we become a wealthy outpost of the United States. Many people wouldn't mind that at all. Not even Puerto Rico. Wealthier because we'd be oil rich. At least that's the idea. Yeah, but what happens if the US packs up and Maduro stays? Then what happens to our relationships? Well, it goes south. That's why I said the quote from Kissinger. It's a dangerous place to be as an American enemy, but to be an American ally is fatal. The Republicans have been gerrymandering and the removal of voters from registration lists. Sasha, we don't want to get into that discussion. All parties gerrymander. In fact, in that context, in the states, the Democrats are more gerrymandered than the US. That's why they are in problems right now. When they're looking to gerrymander back as a revenge against the Republicans, they don't have much more space to gerrymander. But would we be wealthy, or would corruption run rampant? Both of those things can be true, Abdul. Both of those things can be true. Chocolingo says, but Trinidad has always been a puppet state. I think there are levels to puppetry. There'll be levels to puppetry. You could be a heavy puppet, a light puppet, a full puppet. Doc Egg says the most gerrymandered states are Republican. That is literally, factually not true, Doc Egg. The top 5 most gerrymandered states, I believe, are all Democrat. Outposts are never wealthy. The countries are usually systematically, financially drained. There is some truth to that. Sasha Orb says not true. All right, let's see if we could pull this up here. We don't have leaders like the Emirates that seek national interests. We have pocket fillers. Well, you see, the Emiratis leaders are Emiratis, so it's nearly like a family business. So of course they're seeking the interests of their family business. Of course they are. That's not a shock. Great topic, guys. Thanks, Michigan, North Carolina, PA, for the based on what result? Question: do local fishermen traverse those waters? Yes, many of them do. Many of them do. And some of them are involved in the trade also. So as it is right now, men could be on a rig and it gets shelled down. That's the thing. I don't think they're going to shell down rigs. I don't think they're going to shell down rigs. Because it's not in Venezuela's best interest to shell down a rig. They do not want to give solid grounds for war. Okay, let's just hope they don't get the same treatment with something resembles drugs, okay? And it's also not in the US interest to bomb a Trinidadian vessel. That's one of the quickest ways for the US to lose a lot of, well, not even lose, because I don't think their action in the Southern Caribbean is picking up a lot of global steam. In Trinidad and in the Caribbean, we're paying attention because it's in our neighborhood. But I don't think when I look at global news, world news, this isn't top of world news. If they bomb a local Trinidad fisherman, even if he may be suspected of iffy actions, that's not going to remain hidden. That's going to be a much harder one to try and bend the facts around to make it fit what you want it to fit. Every vessel on the water is tagged and radar by name. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, strange things have happened. I don't think they're going to mistakenly bomb it. And I don't think they want to bomb it. I don't think the US wants to bomb a Trini vessel. I don't think Venezuela wants to bomb a Trini vessel or anything of the such. I think Venezuela wants the US to seamlessly leave and continue their business, and the US wants Venezuela to, without much trouble, roll over and give up. That's what both parties want. I don't think ideally they want a lot of action out there. The unfortunate thing is that that's not how reality works, and something could happen, and if it does happen, we are in the mix. And they leave Trinidad will be right where they put themselves. Somebody tapping into somebody oil reserves. And Miriam, that's part of the problem. And that's why I say, as the leader, what you're supposed to be is talking smart. You're supposed to be talking smart. Because we can't pick up Trinidad and move location. We cannot move the location of our country. If the US comes, makes a bit of a stir in the water, and then leave, which might be the most possible outcome of all of this, we still have Venezuela to do. Is Exxon US by birth? I don't know. I can't remember where Exxon is originally from. AIS shows every vessel on the sea except military. Military can see everything. Seems like Guyana might get a new government. Really? What gives you that? The last I saw, they were supposing that it was going to the incumbent. Ali already won it heard. I don't think it's actually finished yet as far as I know, but I think he was as far as I know, he was the favorite to win. KPB only looking for a pat on the back from Trump and Rubio, so she'll continue to say anything. I don't think all she's looking for is a pat on the back. I think what she's looking for is headway to make money, or get money, as the case may be. And it, as fatal as it is being a US ally, can open you up to a lot of money, also a lot of resources. A mistake from the US Treasury is enough to fund our entire budget. A mistake is enough to fund our entire budget. And I believe that's what they could be hoping for. Otis, are the results final yet? Are the results finished? And it would have been very interesting should Mr. Mohammed have won in Guyana. Where is he? What's his name again? Duckegg. Duckegg, you were right. You were right, Duckegg. That's what I was looking up. You were correct. Quite correct. And the US love to fund. Yes, they do love to fund. Spending money is what they enjoy doing, based on what I saw on the Allen page. Well, I know that they were complaining about false results being released, and that those results were not accurate, and they were telling people wait on the actual results. So I don't know. The last I heard is Mr. Jagdeo was saying the results would be released in a couple days or something like that. So, but should Mr. Mohammed have won, or should he win? That will be very interesting. Links auto, yes, Sasha. Oh, that's what I was referring to. But that's yes, but no, that's not exactly how it is, because those are a bit distorted because of location. But yes, the most in the top 10 are GOP. That's correct. Trump said today he's staying in the water today, so I foresee we will be in sight, literally. So the shooting behind the boat carrying votes was a true thing. I don't know nothing about that. But yeah, I don't think Trump is necessarily looking to give up on that. But they won't stay there forever. What happens whenever they do move? If they don't get that regime change. But yeah, as I was saying, if Mr. Mohammed in Guyana did win, I believe they are wanted by the US for certain things. They have some questions to answer from the US. How interesting would it be if a man wanted by the US won Guyana's election, and then a man who is also wanted by the US rules Venezuela also? So instead of that US ally bloc that they were looking for between Trinidad, Venezuela, and Guyana, they then have an opposing bloc. They won't touch him if he bows to them. Of course, they won't touch him if he bows to them. But how would he do that? Can I ask a question? Of course you can. Isn't Trump wanted by the US? No, he isn't wanted. They know exactly where he is. 34 felonies. Yeah, he isn't wanted. They got him. I mean, they did charge him and prosecute him. So he isn't wanted anymore. I don't think he was ever really wanted. They got him. they got him. They got him when they wanted him. Found guilty of fraud, the one Asa says, which is a very strange case. That's a very strange case. The New York Appeals Court threw out that. They threw out the punishment from that case. if you all followed that, the appeals court in New York just threw out that whole fraud business. Well, not the whole fraud business, but a significant portion of that fraud business. They threw it out because the banks that the alleged fraud was committed against, the bank said we were happy with the deal. No one lost any money, so it was a crime without a victim. So I mean, strange stuff. Only felons running these countries. Like I don't agree with that felon argument against Trumpy, because to me that entire prosecution seemed very clearly political. I think if they didn't think he was going to run again, they wouldn't have cared to prosecute him. Almost all of the prosecutions seem political. Now, they may have released something into the US political landscape that may have ricochets for years to come, because Trump seems like he is launching quite a few political investigations of his own. And there are countries that run like that. I believe South Korea is a country like that. Basically, every time a new government comes in, nearly all of the old cabinet is arrested and jailed. I don't think that's a healthy way to run your country. But on the other hand, is it that we should just turn a blind eye to what politicians do wrong so that, they don't have political victimization? Correct, Abdul, correct, very correct. He's a close ally now. How can a criminal lawyer become minister in defense? By being appointed as such. Just how a former union leader has now been appointed to our industrial court. Like, what are his industrial court qualifications? But he's been appointed there, hasn't he? But the problem I have is every act is, if corruption started, everyone acts as if corruption started with Trump. Exactly. Like the question I ask people, and people who are already fairly anti-US, here's an idea to think about. You really think that Donald Trump is the most corrupt, most evil criminal US president ever? He's the one with the most, you really think he is the most corrupt evil one ever? Really? Really? Trump was more overt. How was Trump more overt? Like, what was Trump more overtly corrupt with than any of the other presidents? Like, it's interesting that almost all of the names that people are calling as being worst presidents are all Republicans. That tells you something about the media. Somebody just said it. The media tells you he is overt, so you believe it. The media tells you which of those presidents was the worst, so you believe it. Isn't it interesting? All of them are Republicans, so you really think the Democrats weren't the most evil? The party that crafted the KKK, the party that fought the Civil War to retain slavery. None of their presidents were the most evil? You really believe that piece of BS? The man that said he will have the Negroes voting for Dems for the next century while he plotted to destroy their families. That man isn't more evil? Okay, brothers. Okay, brothers. But just bear in mind, the media tells you where to look. For the most part, the media tells you where to look. So a lot of your opinions will be crafted by what they tell you to think about something. They point. Because there's case to get thrown out, that's why they point as a Yep, and Osama was innocent. I ain't say that. That's Abdul saying that. I don't think he was innocent. I think he falls into the same category as I was saying from the top. People who have their hands in the cookie jar, but everybody knows their hands are in the cookie jar. Everybody's hands are in the cookie jar. But when they want to punish you because they don't like you, they punish you for putting your hands in the cookie jar. All a matter of perspective, but for me, Reagan take the cake. Why do you say that, truth teller? Why do you say that? 95 crime bill from Clinton admin and so on. Exactly, the media owns people's minds. The more wrong you do, the faster you climb the ladder, DJGR says. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Yeah, why would you say Reagan take the cake as the most corrupt? What's your view of that? When we think Democratic politicians, we think Kennedy, Carter, and Clinton. And a lot of those people weren't good people in my view. Nathan, we're betting the US is leaving these waters and Trinidad aces grass. I think they are leaving these waters eventually, but I don't think we'd be in grass position necessarily. Well, summarize it now. Give us the high point. What was the worst thing? What was the worst thing that they did? Otis, here's the reason. After Obama, the media, there were multiple articles that said the worst scandal of the Obama presidency was him wearing a tan suit. That's what the media said. The worst scandal of Barack Obama's years were him wearing a tan suit. But that's not true. The man murdered civilians across the entire Middle East and Near East. He recreated slave trade in Libya. He was drone boss himself, droning people across the world. He funded the wars the cartels did. Like, those are factual statements, but if you look to the media for those statements, you won't get it. So of course you wouldn't have any idea what bad they did. You wouldn't have an idea what bad they did. That's how it works when the media is on your side. I am not saying that the others are good. I am saying that the media has you a bit fooled to think one is good and the other is bad. It's the good guys versus the bad guys. I regularly say, so often you recognize so many things in this world are the bad guys versus the bad guys. They're all bad guys over there. Now, that's not saying that there may not be a difference between one bad guy and another bad guy. There may indeed be a difference. There may indeed be a difference. And oftentimes, if you look closely enough, you could probably choose one out of the two. If someone tells you you have a choice between eating dog mess and Gramazone, it's either you eat a spoonful of dog mess or a spoonful of Gramazone. I mean, not good choices, but to me, that's an easy choice. Deported a lot too, but Trump usually get the bad guy play for that. Correct. And somehow I don't think it would be about teeth. I don't think that's what the qualifying matter would be on that. But there are ways to make even bad choices, but very often they're bad choices. There's too much nuance in the world, lots of gray area in the world, but too much ideal is correct. Correct. And many times you look at things as, and I probably blame some of the cartoons and comics of our childhood for that, where they make you think that it's the hero versus the villain, and the hero is all good and the villain is all bad, and the hero wants to do the good thing because he's a good person, that's why he wants to do the good thing, and the villain wants to do the bad thing because he's a bad person and he just hates people, so he wants to do the bad things. Well, that's not really the case many of the times. That's not the case many of the times. The good guy who was in charge of the children protection over in Tobago, they just fired him the other day. What was he in charge of again? THA fires Benjamin, ex-Children's Authority chairman, on S charges. That's the good guy. This guy was out there to protect people. He was a traumatologist. Well, is a traumatologist. No, he was looking for those that needed help to help them. Good guy. Good guy. Versus the bad guys, you know. That's why you don't buy into narratives. Narratives are so dangerous. Narratives are so. It's part of the reason I continue. Like I prefer free market, what they call capitalism. So you got fired without real proof, DJ JR. What you talking about, DJ? What do you mean without real proof? You mean the messages and pictures isn't proof enough for you, DJ JR? DJ, should we send officers to check your hard drive? What do you mean without real proof? DJ, read up on this story, yeah? You don't want to be on the wrong one in this story. Stop it before. Stop it. You see, I don't buy this judicial nonsense. Like, I could only see a guy as guilty if the courts find him guilty. And you know, if the courts don't find him guilty, well then he didn't do the thing. Listen, if the man business out there with the pictures sending to the boy and the boy mother show it and the man apologize for it trying to pull it back, I don't need a court case for this. Fire him yesterday. DJ JR, sir, defending this. Someone look for his hard drive, find him and look for his hidden folders. I ain't like that one. It's funny, those same people will bend their justice for people they like versus who. Correct. He probably didn't read the news stories. Okay. Yeah. If you don't know, that was say. If you don't know, I understand. That man was my social work lecturer, and you see, you shouldn't say that too loud. But I never trusted the man. I think if I dig up in my lives enough, I could go back to stories where I spoke about this man. And I spoke about the thing, what is a traumatologist? I remember distinctly saying, what is even a traumatologist? Go ahead, DJ, you ask away. What is even a traumatologist? Yes, I did, Chukolingo. Lovely stuff. I'm sorry, maybe I'm a bit old school in that. I don't trust many of those fields. Traumatologists, trauma specialists, most therapists. Like, you know who I think you should look to for therapy? Someone who has lived a successful life. That's who I want as a therapist. If your life, if you are 80 years old and I look at your life and it's something that I, for the most part, want, you could be a therapist for me. A set of people with chaotic lives, you go in and sit down with them for them to explain your life to you. Come on now, man, let's have sense. How can you be freeing criminals and bank you're defending the country? Who is that? A lot of people have done a lot worse things, but we just don't know. That's facts, Tian. Those are facts. Without a doubt, facts. There are allegations against a deceased PNM bigwig. Not the mountain, but alright? And those allegations will break your heart, make your ears ring and your eyes water. And that man went to the grave with adulation and still in elite status in the country. Never having served any consequence for what was alleged he did. So I don't doubt you at all, Tian. I do not doubt you at all. I know that for sure. But that doesn't change the fact that once you're caught, you need to be dealt with strictly. And the nature of what he was caught doing, it doesn't seem like that was his first time. What do you think about Anil Need? Then you think this man should have... No. Otis, the thing is, this is most likely not the first... Yes, that's what I said. If you look at how this all happened, that doesn't seem to be a man who is on his first rodeo. It doesn't seem to be a man who is on his first rodeo. That seems like somebody who has done these kinds of things before. So it's not about doing the act, then it becomes about being caught. Well, that's the nature of the law. The law has always been that. And it's not even 100% about being caught. It's about being found guilty. Because it could be that the nature of how this case runs, he isn't found guilty, and it doesn't land on his permanent record as such. And the next thing you know, in 5 years, he's up the islands in St. Kitts or something, doing the same thing, running their children's authority. Those things happen. So, like, okay, yes, I wish it was about just doing the crime. I wish God ruled the world, and once you did it, because he knew everything, you were punished instantly. We didn't even have to find you and go through all this court case nonsense. But that's not the world we live in, unfortunately. That's just not reality. So, what you do is those that you catch and those that you can prove, you attempt to sink them so heavy, so deep, so irrevocably that those that aren't caught yet are scared of, hopefully. But as we spoke about with the traffickers willing to risk death to do their thing, many of the perverts are willing to risk it for their nonsense too. Like, you hear police run up on some of these men, and you hear they have external hard drives with terabytes of this nonsense nastiness in it. And you're like, sir, terabytes? What were you doing? But the answers I find as a society, we turn a blind eye to too many things until they become a societal major problem. Yes, but here's why I think that is Theon Graham. I think multiculturality does some of that. By default, a multicultural society has to turn a blind eye to a much wider array of things. By default. Up until not too long ago, in our society, you could have walked upon someone legally married to a minor, and then culturally married to 3 other people. And in your sensibilities, that might aghast you. But in our cultural context, that person, at one point in time, was well within their rights. Yeah, there is a foggy feeling on my lens trickling. You're seeing right. There's dust on my front camera. I have to carry it for them to take it out. And anybody knows somewhere I could get a front camera wiped out? The dust inside the screen. I don't even know how that happened. Magic. What is going on with the mats? Nothing. Mats is matsing still. So yeah, you would have to see that and look away. I think he's getting what he wants, Arita, attention. That man seems an attention-liking man. For me, example, catcalling women, to me, is inappropriate, but it's a norm. And you know, there are some women very comfortable and in fact encourage that. And if you are in a multicultural society, you have to be able to be quiet to a wider array of things. So minding your business, keeping your head down is a part of our cultural reality. Yeah, you go in as a Christian, you go into the Kali temple and you see their prayers and your Christian norms, that's But in our country, if you go up on Facebook and make a comment about that using your Christian norms, by and large, the country would be like, mind your business. Because we are a multicultural country. So what we're saying there is you need to be able to turn a blind eye to more things. And so we do. So we do. Is that your business to talk about? Like, I think if the country was one extended family, I don't think it would have been the same. Love and hate it here, Thean says. You know, I think that's the nature of the entire world. I don't think there's a place in the world you could go where you wouldn't have things that you could love and things that you could hate. That's just the nature, because that's how people are. There are so many things to love from people, but so much to hate from people too. The same humans give you both ends. What you gonna do about that? They don't want my sisters in Syria come back home, though. They ain't turning a blind eye to that. Yeah, I appreciate that you forgetting that one, Abdul. But she didn't. Cams didn't appoint some group or something to look through for that, to figure out what's going on. Like for me, and we discussed this before. For me, I am callous enough to say no, innit? But then, here's where a good comparative argument could be made. If you say no to them, how it is I could see a new Venezuelan in my country every day, and a family that are native to this land made a stupid decision and you lock them out. Like, I okay with locking them out, but I okay with locking out a whole lot of other people too. But if you're letting in some people, then they have all right to say, but how you let them in? And then you're telling me I can't come in. They have all, like, if we were to do a comparative risk analysis, I feel comparatively, we have more risk from letting in random Venezuelans than letting back in the Syrian refugees. Some Syrian mothers and their children who went to ISIS back in the ISIS days, most of them went as a family with their husbands. For the most part, they say mostly the husbands led them there. The husbands have died, so it's mothers and their children who have been living for like a decade in refugee camps out there in Syria, and they would like to come home. But some people are worried, are we letting back in extremists who went and were ideologically aligned and trained by ISIS? Or are these people victims who were carried there? Many of them were carried when they were little children. I think some of them may have been born over there, and the women who would have been led by their husbands over there. So, for me, as I said, I like the risk high, everybody stay out, hard luck. But for them, if I were them and I look and I see Venice coming in my home, I want to come back too. So could they get vetted? Seems like something easy to solve. I think it's something, for the most part, that doesn't have too much negative kickback in leaving it as is, and there's potential negative in doing something, so politicians would take the safer route. Politicians would take the safer route. There aren't many people who are going to protest in the streets or hold back their votes if you do bring them back. But if you do bring them back, there might be some people that mightn't like that. And then if you bring them back and some incident happens, it's all on you. So the action with the least risk for me as a politician is to leave them to suffer. And that's why I say communists and socialists are fools. Communists and socialists are fools. Because if you give the state the right to see about your well-being in totality, the state is a numerical decision maker. If you aren't benefiting, if the cost benefit analysis goes negative on you suffering, and hard luck for that. It's like in Canada right now, medical assistance in dying made. DJ Lawrence, if you were in the same position, will you feel the same way? Same position as who? If I were a leader, would I feel the same way? Yes, I would feel the same way. I don't know if I make the same decision, but I will feel the same way. I will feel that the lowest risk is to just leave them there and let them suffer. That is the lowest risk to me. It's like what was happening in many of the children's homes. They received a report about that decades ago, but it was much lower risk to do nothing, let children generation in generation out suffer, grow up with this abuse, because that's the less risky move. Now, they did a whole other release. An investigation last year. Let's see if the new government is going to do something about the children's homes. Well, I don't agree with your position. What don't you agree with? You don't think that... Oh, no. Listen, I'm not saying that would have been the decision. I'm saying it's the least risky decision. It's the least risky. Now, it's not the most caring, it's not the most kind, but it is the least risky. And that's what many governments tend to do. And that's why I say I think socialists and communists are fools, because you don't leave your well-being to people who don't care about your well-being as the first priority. Before they went, there were multiple warnings not to get involved, I recall. Well, yes, there were multiple warnings, I recall that too. But what if the children didn't have a say, as they wouldn't? What if the children were born over there? They didn't have a say in that matter? All right, truth teller? Do you punish the children for what their dads did? And if, as some accounts are saying, the fathers carried the whole families who basically just submitted and followed, are you punishing a woman for following her husband? And some of them said that the husbands lied to them. The longer they stay there, the more they may be vengeful towards us, Trinidad. Boo, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that leaving them out there may be making them even more bitter towards Trinidad. So that eventually, if you do let them in, what's next? We have deportees returned to this country. Good point, DJ Lawrence. Very good point. They are deportees who do violent crimes, and they still come back home. And the reality, and here's the difficulty though at DJ Lawrence, because the idea with a deportee is that they paid the time for their crime. What time are these people paying, and then for what crime? If you say, well, these people may have been criminals doing crimes over with ISIS, how do you get the evidence of that to prosecute them? You can't bring them to Trinidad and throw them in prison with no evidence of anything. But then, you can't ignore the fact that many Trinidadians would be worried about people who were actively part of a global terrorist organization with the intent of overthrowing the world for the most part. You must understand why people will be worried about that. DJ Lawrence says they deserve their citizenship. I hate the word deserve. All right, Chocolingo. I hate the word deserve. What is deserve? Deserve? who deserves anything? They deserve their citizenship? No. Well, they are entitled. Not necessarily because they aren't getting it. They get their citizenship if the government decides they want it. That's how the world functions. The government decides they want it by and large if the public puts enough pressure on them, by and large. They are born here. Yes, they are. But what happens? So what? If each government keeps saying no, what? Then what? If each government says no, like coming up and saying they're entitled to it, so they should get it, they deserve it, doesn't change people's mind, and that's you're making a statement, but that doesn't change people. That doesn't make it. Who cares? Who cares, DJ Lawrence? That's not how they come home. They come home by you convincing people that they should come home, telling people that's the wrong thing, that's wrong, this right. Who cares what you think is right, DJ Lawrence? Who died and made you God? No one cares. Okay, you think it's not right. Okay, cool, they're still there. Now what? Well, the matter should be taken to court. But if it isn't, then what? You have to convince the people. You have to convince the people. And if you jump in this morning, they're entitled, they deserve, and they have to get. And Trinidadians are saying, we don't want them here because we are worried and we are afraid. Nobody cares. Their fear is going to supersede it. You're going to have to find another way to convince them. And that's the exercise I was going through here. How to convince people of this. I think the comparative argument of Venezuelans entering and them not being able to is a good argument. It's not about what the people want. It is literally, in the most literal sense, about what the people want. Do you know what politics means? Politics means the affairs of the people. It literally is about what the people want. They are citizens. And if the people don't want them, even if they are citizens, they will die out there. They will die out there. So it literally is about what the people want. So wait, we are afraid of them coming home but siding with Trump? Yes, I guess, the Prime Minister. You got that wrong, Mike. What did I get wrong? They are literally still in Syria. What did I get wrong? DJ Lawrence, show me DJ Lawrence. Argue that it's right, say it's right 5 times in the chat, and make them reach home. Show me. Make them reach home. Because it's right. And they home yet? Have you made them reach home yet, DJ Lawrence? Are they home? Or they still in Syria in the refugee camp waiting on the people to make the politicians bring them home, whether it's right or not? And the thing is though, Thean, I don't think there's a good argument to make about the children, because the children had no choice in the matter. But there's also an argument to make about the risk. That's the balance of it. The thing there are persons who have been returned and they are living normal lives. To me, that fact that they abandoned their country to fight for another state, let them stay there. Well, you see, Otis, that's the problem. If the men were the ones who abandoned the country to fight for another state, what do you do with their children? Like, I argued this with Abdul some time ago. The adult wives, you have to make a good case. You have to make a good case that you were not aware and this wasn't your intention when you left. But for sure, the children can't be held responsible. If it was my family out there, I would have taken the state to court. And then what, DJ Lawrence? And then what? They have attempted that. What are you going to file it under? What are you going to file it under? How is this case going to be filed? The United Nations has been begging Trinidad and many other countries for quite some time now to repatriate their citizens, and yet still those refugee camps are huge. The United Nations themselves, I believe France made a call not too long ago, US made a call, still. So you're going to take them to court, then what? How's that all going to work out? You suppose that Frank C. Prasad can order the government to send a plane and a team out to Syria to extricate those people? So what you are saying is that government decisions can't be challenged. I am saying that some government decisions can't be challenged, or they're nearly impossible to challenge, and there isn't much you can do to make them do otherwise, other than making them make a political change. You can't go to the court. So if you don't like that they appointed Rudy Endarasing to the industrial court, you can't go to the court to make the government change that. That's a political decision. You can't change that. You don't like that they appointed Alexander to Homeland Security. Go to the court and see what that's going to do now. All government decisions can be challenged in court. I mean, you could write a filing and attempt to file it in court. The court doesn't honor all of them, do. So the government decided to hire Alexander as Minister of Homeland Security. You think you could go and sue the government to make them change that? What do you think? What? Under what? Tell me what do you file and where do you go to file such a thing? DJ Lawrence, how do you sue the government to bring back your family from Syria? What's the steps there? I mean, come on. You are being extreme. Well, this is an extreme case. People who went away to fight for a terrorist army, allegedly. So it's an extreme case. What do you mean I'm being extreme? It's an extreme case. Well, Abdul, in terms of terrorism and the demarcation of terrorism, they say violence is different. That decision can be challenged in court. What decision, DJ Lawrence? The government has not made a decision. That's what I keep telling you. They're not making a decision. That's the point. So it's like all the people that were suing the government to make the government make a decision on their FUL. And some of them won the lawsuit and they're still waiting on that decision because it's a very nebulous thing to try to do. You're trying to sue the government to make them make a decision. Not that they made a choice and you're suing them based on the choice. You're trying to sue the government to make them make a choice. That's just not how that works. The argument going on with Theon, Trini, Kim, and Abdul there, there's no end to that argument, because that argument still goes on inside the US amongst the US and those opposed to most of their foreign policy. There was a similar case in England. Do the research, my brother. What's the girl's name? Oh gosh, her name was so much in the news. I can't imagine. I forgot that name. Yes, I remember that case though. I do remember that case, but that's still not the same like this, and England isn't us. That's still not the same like this, and England isn't us. I'm almost sure they wouldn't willingly fight for Trinity to the way they did for their religion. The people in the refugee camps aren't the ones who fought, by and large. No, I'm not talking about Greta. Shamima Begum. Is that the name? Shamima Begum? I feel like that's the name. Shamima Begum. Yeah, but there's almost no way the Privy Council can or would force Trinidad to send a plane to Syria and take people. But okay, you file the case on their behalf, DJ Lawrence, because their family hasn't done anything like that apparently. You go ahead, you file it, brother. You file it. You file away. Yes, she was. Yes, she was. And yeah, the British courts are notoriously pro-liberalism, so that's not a surprise that the British courts went how the British courts went. The British court recently ruled that the migrants have more of a right than the local councils, which is a very strange thing. That place is dying, so they'll get what they have coming. But that's not how it works everywhere. So that's not going to happen. Check the JP in the closest court to you. Yeah, go down by the JP. Go down by the JP and file on their behalf and see how it all goes. See how it all goes. Like, come on, man. Tell me the war rules. I know you know all the stones to throw there, Abdul. You know them well. All right, let me see if I could pull up this article. For the guy who is sure that they will win that case up to the Privy Council. All right, here's an interesting article that I read about 4 years back. That would have been. Court blanks repatriation of women, children from ISIS refugee camp in Syria. A high court has ruled that it cannot order the Minister of National Security to repatriate a group of 12 women and children being held at the Kurdish-run Al-Hol refugee camp in northern Syria. In ruling on Monday, Justice Joanne Charles said there was neither a legislative nor a policy framework in place for repatriating nationals from conflict or war zones, nor does the minister have the legal power or discretion to repatriate or facilitate the repatriation of these nationals, she said. These were the judge's findings as she dismissed a judicial review application and a constitutional claim brought by the families of 12 women and children being held at the camp. So you could go on and refile that same one. Could attempt to refile it and see, if it all helps. You talk about democracy, but you act like authoritarian. I act like that's the way governments run. That is the way governments run. Wasn't Trump just stopped from deportation of children without adults temporarily, and it was a Trini-born judge of all, a judge born in Trinidad, that made the that halted him on those unaccompanied minors being deported. This is an international zone of peace. Of course, we won't have legal framework for repatriation. So it comes back to my point. Democracy only exists here for one day. No. Like, you don't understand what democracy is. Democracy is you choose your leaders, but then the leaders have the authority and the power. Like, do you expect to democratically choose leaders, but then you don't expect the leaders to have power? Is any expression of legally vested authority authoritarian? When the government decides to place a highway somewhere instead of between their own legs, is that an authoritarian move, or is that just authority? When you vote for a government, they have authority. All democracy eventually what? No, you vote for a leader and the leader can have power. Like, so what are you talking about? So it's like you expect to vote for the leader, and then every decision the leader makes, they have to come back to you to ask you for the decision again? Like, what do you think this is? How do you think this functions? Yeah, leave it for next night, Pian. Like, how do you think this functions, sir? Yes, you have to give someone power in order to make decisions, and the power would be exercised. What the democracy is you get to vote for the person that can exercise the power. Well, after 5 years, you get back the power for one day. No, after 5 years, you get to choose the next person to express that power. So maybe you can look for someone who will make the power decisions that you want. Like, what do you want? Do you want a leader that has no power, a leader that doesn't have the ability to make decisions? Is that what you'd prefer? So what do you want from a government? They must never be able to make a decision, or they must never be able to make a decision that the public doesn't like. And if that's the case, then they will never make a decision, because you'll never get unanimous public approval for any decision a government makes. And you know what's ironic about this, DJ Lawrence, and so typical of that kind of thinking? You're saying that a government is authoritarian because they don't bring home these people that you want them to bring home. But somehow a government wouldn't be authoritarian if they do bring home these people that people like Theon Graham don't want them to bring home. So if it's a government of your choosing, DJ Lawrence, if you were in charge of the government, you would have brought home the Syrian refugees even if Theon Graham didn't want them to come back home. And you would have brought home the refugees regardless of what any other trainee said. And so then you aren't democratic either. You're a dictator too. You just want the dictatorship in your direction. I didn't ask your reasoning, DJ Lawrence. I know your reasoning. You said it already. But it doesn't matter. You just want dictatorship in your direction. That's it. It's not like you have some elevated view of democracy different from others where we will never make a decision that people disagree with. You will very much do it. You will very much do it, just in your choice. You want to make that choice, and you don't want us to make that choice. It's the same thing, and it's how all the democracies run. It's like people are confused about how a government serves and rules at the same time. Yeah, it is like strange stuff. Citizens of a country cannot do what they want and their government must bail them out. Right, let me look to wrap up. That's all I have for now, folks. That's all I have for now. And like, come on. We got to think these things through. A government isn't authoritarian because they exercise authority. That's what we vote them in for. And really and truly, what you would like is authority exercised in another direction. So if they were sent back, would you refuse them entry? If I was in charge and they were sent back, would I refuse them entry? I don't think it's realistic to refuse them entry. I don't think that's realistic if they were sent back. But it's difficult to send them back. That's the whole thing. It's difficult to send them back. But I don't think, like, if they came across on a pirogue back to Trinidad and Tobago somehow, It's not like Coast Guard could turn them back at our maritime borders and say go drown out in the Atlantic. I don't think that's going to happen. So if somehow they were posted back, that would present a different situation. But as it is right now, that's not the situation that presents itself. Well, then once there's the means, they should be brought back home. Should. Okay, that's your should. That's your should. That's not everyone's should. And as we just went through this whole discussion to show, it's about what the people want. And if the people don't want it, it's not going to happen, regardless of what you think is should. So you know, you get people to do that, get enough of people to agree with your shoulds, get your people to vote in somebody who agrees with your should, and hopefully the person who agrees with your should do it. That's how it's done. Other than that, keep hoping. Alright people, that's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, and entertained. I am Nathan Springer. This has been the Mindful Live. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys again for the next one tomorrow around that 9:30 p.m. time. Until then, people, hold it on. Stay good, stay well, stay inside, outside. Sketchy. Peace. I'm out. Bye.